Hi, I'm Greg from Blind Enthusiasm Brewing Company. And today we're talking about mixed and spontaneous fermentation blends. This is something that we do here at Blind Enthusiasm that's kind of uncommon. Doug, what is a spontaneous and mixed fermentation blend? What does that involve?
Well, so those are two separate brewing techniques that we do. Mixed fermentation being a technique kind of mimicking what happens in spontaneous fermentation, where we grow a blend or a mix
Oh,
of different microorganisms in the lab, and that is what we pitch into the beer to ferment it. Spontaneous fermentation is a natural way of fermenting the beer where the wort is cooled in a coolship, and then the natural mix of microorganisms from the air around the brewery inoculate the wort, and that's what ferments the beer.
so how many of these do we do? Is this a common process for us?
So this is 100% of what we produce is mixed and spontaneous fermentation, but about 90% of what we produce now is spontaneous, and we've actually not brewed mixed fermentation beer in just over 2 years.
So we're primarily so I mean something like Convergent Evolution here. This is in a sense a rare beer because it's a blend of those two techniques, but we're not making a lot of that anymore.
Yeah, at some point in time, just based off with our priority becoming spontaneous, convergent evolution will cease to exist.
So we'll cease evolving.
It'll cease
The
evolving.
evolution will end.
Yes, I'm sure there will be iterations of it because of different things we're doing with research and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
in its current form and as a primary part of our production,
So why did you make these beers?
I'm very passionate about this type of brewing and have been in my now going on 16-year career. It became a passion from the start. So much so, even going to Belgium to learn where they do it best in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, working at the lambic breweries there and learning from Cantillon and those guys. So uh, I do it because of that, and then partnering and coming to work for you.
Yeah.
We built a facility from the ground
Yeah.
up to specialize in
But
it.
why blend them?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Oh, the other question is good too, but this is a great question. Why blend them?
So both techniques create nuanced differences and have a different range of kind of flavor profiles, textures that they bring kind of to the party. So when you blend the two techniques, you can kind of get a product that's bigger than the sum of its parts or has more range than the sum of its parts. As we were just doing our last
Release notes.
release notes for Convergent Evolution, we noted some very particular things about texture, the citrus flavors, the way the fruitiness came through, as well as certain aspects of the different vintages. By blending the two different techniques, that was how this beer became very unique compared to some of our others.
One thing that we've noticed, and one reason we're moving kind of a little bit more to spontaneous, of course, is that we're getting a bit better stability in the barrel. We can have longer cycles that the beer stays in barrel. What do you think is going to happen when you put from a stability perspective, a spontaneous and mixed fermentation blend in the bottle? What do you think will happen?
So that is something that we're actually really cognizant of when we blend them, because the two techniques actually stabilize very differently in the barrel, as you had noted. And with spontaneous, with the natural microorganisms, they might not be quite as aggressive as the ones cultivated in the lab. So when we blend these beers, we actually put them in tank and let them kind of um,
Get acquainted?
converge, if you will.
It's like a convergent evolution of some sort?
Yes, exactly. So that any residual sugars or the difference in stabilization point, it gives it time to stabilize in tank before it goes into bottle. So that once it's in bottle, it would be very similar to any of our other beers in that there is microorganisms. There will be evolution within the bottle over time, especially if it's cellared correctly. But it won't be risky or have the risk of overcarbonating or anything like that.
So one question would be how long does it normally beer stabilize all one type in the tank, and then how long would you increase the time for two types of beer, spontaneous and mixed versions?
Yeah, so if we were doing, say, just a mixed fermentation blend or just a spontaneous blend, we could, as long as clarity is correct, package it within a few days if we wanted to. There is always like a nice kind of evolution that happens in the tank, or we have a word for it that's escaping me. Like
Convergent evolution?
no, where they kind of like
Melding? They
yeah,
meld?
they meld. There's a better word that we use typically, but my brain's not working 100%. We leave it for like usually a couple of weeks at least, just to kind of help it like um
Stabilized.
stabilize. There's a word I'm looking for here.
Harmonized.
It's almost like that. Anyways, and
Okay, we never ask people this, but those of you in the comments, if you want to put words on options.
this is why I
Yeah.
rely heavily to remember words of things for Nar and Nick,
Yeah.
but who are the brewers?
We're
who
not
work
allowing you
with
to
us,
call a friend
but
during this podcast.
I need to call a friend right now.
Can't call a friend.
But anyways, we do like to give them a little bit of time just so they like there
Just
is.
a couple weeks. But how about
Yes,
in the case of this beer? How
But
long
with
do you
this one, I think it was like 2 months. It was almost as
Oh, wow.
long as when we do fruit beers, and we use kind of the fruit beers as a gauge because it is also a re-fermentation. With the fruit beers, when you put the fruit and it's a new sugar source, so when you're putting the two beers together and their finishing points are different, it is almost as if you're like looking at it as a light fermentation that would happen to help stabilize it.
Are you putting a blow-off tube and all that stuff on there? Or?
Yeah, anytime we blended the tanks, there's always going to be like a venting of
Yeah.
the tank because there'll be CO2 released just naturally from the rousing of the beer taken out of the barrel. There's always a small amount of CO2 in solution, so we always vent the tanks. But there is also a little more bubbling with a beer like this.
Interesting.
And we'll see a density change from blend day to packaging day, and we wait for that to stabilize as well.
And it's fair to say jury's out on how long these will age for in like cellaring and that sort of thing?
I would say it would be very similar to any of our other products.
So 10 years plus.
Yeah, 10 years plus for sure. The techniques are all the same as our other products. It's just that we blended the two different techniques together. So stability and cellaring should be quite succinct with all of that.
Okay. Another thing that we do, I mean, we are, if anything, sticklers for precision.
Yes.
So one of the very things we do is we've actually reused some of our mixed fermentation barrels and put spontaneous beer in them.
Yeah, so as we've reduced the amount of mixed fermentation that we brew, we have put spontaneous, or what would be called spontaneous, into those barrels. However, we don't, within the brewery, like...
we don't gloss over it. We call it mixed.
Yeah, we don't
spontaneous
identify
blend.
that as spontaneous, even though it's beer that's come from the Coolship.
Right.
That would never make it into a blend that we call 100% spontaneous. And that's just because the microorganisms from mixed fermentation will have inoculated the barrel.
Right.
And there's no way to like truly sterilize or sanitize a barrel unless you were to have like a giant barrel-sized autoclave.
And I have one in my basement. But
Yeah, but like obviously not at the brewery.
Yeah,
That's just for your funsies at home, right? So,
just my general autoclave cars.
yeah,
and things like that. Yeah.
Tires, things like that.
everything.
You know, so
My bed.
through to be authentic to the techniques, we really just want to we want to identify that. So that's where things like when I was mentioning earlier, that Convergent in its current form, where it's a true mixed fermentation beer and a true spontaneous beer being blended, we just won't have that anymore. What we'd call mixed ferment or more spontaneous mixed ferment hybrid barrels from the start. But again, to be as genuine and faithful to like what we do, we would never we would never cross that line.
Okay, I have one last question. I notice a lot of our fruit blends tend to be mixed and spontaneous blends, like up to this point at least, some of the fruit blends. Is there a reason for that, or is that just happens to be what stock we have available?
Yeah, it's we're probably 50% of them are the mixed fermentation spontaneous blends. And that just comes down to the type of characteristics you want out of the barrels you choose for a fruit beer. Less to do with like this is good and that's bad and things like that. We typically for fruit beers try to make blends that are there's not really too much standout character from the fermentation itself. More of like a balanced kind of base beer kind of quality beer because you're going to get so much novel characteristic from the individual fruits. And then on top of it, acid profile and the presentation of like density, pH, and those things have more of an effect on how the fruit is perceived. We don't really want to take away from the fruit, but we do want to match those qualities to the fruit as well.
So that mixed spontaneous tends to be a nice way to do that.
Yeah, we tend to. It opens up the amount of stock that we have, and it allows us also to pick all the barrels that would highlight that fruit. So regardless of fermentation technique, say we're blending peach, we pick all the barrels that we feel will present peach in its best form, regardless of method.
Open,
yeah, regardless of method, because when those beers, the peach is the thing we're trying to emphasize, right?
Cool.
So,
is there anything I've forgotten about mixed and spontaneous fermentation blends?
I don't know.
I can't think of anything.
I think we've chatted a little bit about like inviting other people into the brewery to do get to know the experience of blending with us.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah,
but okay.
So maybe we'll tease that here. But
okay, I think we're pretty good then. So thanks once again. Cheers.
Cheers.
And I hope you all enjoy it.